Hello, everybody. Good to be here with you. Today we are talking about the respiratory system, also known as the respiratory system. And this one is one of my favorites because we had a discussion activity a while back when we were talking about organic molecules and cells about, when do we transition from being matter to being alive? And a lot of you actually said breathing. And I think there is some truth in that we have to breathe. And we're going to learn all about that, about why we breathe. And actually, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. It's amazing how we've been doing something our whole life, and yet we don't know how to do it. And so we'll just start off here with, and I've already kind of told you guys some of this, but there's this ancient symbol here. Looks something like that. This is called an Ankh, A-N-K-H. This is Egyptian. It's an Egyptian symbol, a hieroglyph. And what it actually means is the breath of life. And so if you said that in order to be alive, you need to breathe, I think the Egyptians kind of definitely agree with you. We've been thinking about these kinds of topics for, centuries, thousands and thousands of years. What it means to be alive and what is the purpose of living. So this is highly connected to us as human beings. Okay, I want to start off with another little banger. What is breathing, really? It's about exchanging gases. Okay? And breathing is not necessarily this. It's not necessarily pumping air across your lungs. And I want to share one of my favorite little organisms. We're going to draw him here. Oh boy. Okay, it's not terrible. That'd be more webbed, but you get the idea. Try to do it quick. Oh, that's cute. Oh yeah. He's got a nice little tail. Ah, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite. Okay. All right, I see what I'm doing there. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And then now maybe you'll actually start to get what this is. So this, if you haven't figured it out, or maybe you don't know it, it's something called an axolotl. And these only live in a couple places, in a lake and a river in Mexico, actually. So this is an axolotl. Axolotl. Ejoete is actually what it is in Spanish, I believe. Axolotl. And they live in, only to Lake Xochimilco and like another little body of water in Mexico. And that's it. That's the only place they live on Earth. Why did I draw these? Well, their gills actually look something. They have like, oh, sorry, I already gave the punchline away. But they got little like kind of frayed ends on the side there. We talked about the cardiovascular system, and the cardiovascular system actually goes out into these little things on their head, like so. So that'd be an artery, and then this would be a vein. And this goes into their cardiovascular system and feeds the rest of their body with gases, oxygen, and removes carbon dioxide. So these are actually gills. They're external gills. These are external gills. And this is one way that axolotls breathe. They also have lungs, so they can go up to the air and breathe. So they're kind of like a fish, kind of like an amphibian. They are an amphibian, but they have these external gills. If you don't know what an axolotl is, It's one of the reasons why I became a biologist, I would say, right there. I saw a picture of this in the library when I was a young child, about 5, maybe. And I was like, what is this cartoon I'm looking at? This isn't real. What? It is. It's a salamander. And you can see the cardiovascular system coming in, and it goes actually down into these little tentacle-looking things. And so as it's sitting underwater like that, it can gather gases through diffusion through the water from these external gills. Pretty nifty, indeed. All right, so we do this whole thing too, and salamanders do this. The Egyptians were fascinated by this, and we've talked also, we've already talked about respiration. I don't know if you remember this, but we talked about it with this little guy. That looks something like this. Right? This is a mitochondria, or a mitochondria, or a mitochondria, which is a whipped little bacteria that a big bacteria swallowed to make energy for it. That's what we are. We're now that big bacteria, and our cells are full of these mitochondria. Mitochondria. It's our little energy slave. Okay? And this thing, we talked about this, if we go all the way back here, in cellular respiration. You know, about half the semester ago, we talked about this. And it's going to come up again here. This is the whole point of what these gills are for and what our lungs are for. It's to feed this thing. Look at this thing. This thing looks like a big, gaping, hungry mouth. And what do we feed this thing? We feed it oxygen, O2. Right? We take O2 and we put it in here. And what else do we take? We take sugar and we put it in here. And what are the things that we get out? We get out 3 things. What do we breathe out? We breathe out carbon dioxide, CO2. We also get water, H2O. And then we get ATP. Right? This is the same thing as a fire. You take a fuel and mix it with oxygen, you burn it, you get CO2 and water. Out of your tailpipe of your car, the thing that's coming out of there the most is CO2 and water. That's why when it's really cold, you see all that kind of water vapor coming out of there. Okay? This is why we breathe, is to feed our mitochondria. We need to feed it oxygen. That's what our entire respiratory system is about, and that's what our entire breath of life, this Ankh symbol, all of that, really what it is, it's symbolizing the need to feed this mitochondria. Because we're no longer a little tiny bacteria that can just breathe through its membrane. We need a system to bring in this gas, and then another system, the cardiovascular system, to pump it all through our body. So this is really the melding of our heart and our external environment, is the respiratory system. You don't have one without the other. Okay? And it's interesting how different organisms do this. Like a worm, for example. You don't really need to know this, but maybe I'll put it on the test. Something like a little earthworm. You know, they got this little kind of fat part right there, and they got all these lines. Earthworms they don't have lungs. They breathe through their skin. They don't have lungs or gills. Earthworms breathe through their skin. And salamanders and frogs can breathe through their skin a little bit, but they'll still have lungs and gills. And it's weird, most salamanders don't have gills. That's why this is so weird, but these guys still do. Fish have gills, not salamanders, for the most part. Like frogs ain't walking around with gills. They got lungs, bro. Okay. All right, so really what we're talking about at the end of the day here is this thing. How do we feed this thing? And we feed it with our respiratory system. All right? So you might be thinking, all right, we're going to talk about the respiratory system. The first thing we're going to talk about is lungs. Wrong. Talk about gills. And then we're going to actually draw We're going to draw a little brain here. Let's draw a little brain. Because our respiratory system is a pretty unique part of us in the sense that we can control it with our thoughts, or we can let it kind of take control of itself. Just drawing a little brain here, drawing in some wrinkles. There's part in the center here. Kind of looks something like that. And we'll talk all about the brain in more details in the future. Well, let's just draw a little simple one here. All right. It's a pretty good looking little brain. Okay, now let's draw in. Let's actually draw in our heart now. Which looks something like this. Remember, it looks kind of like two little acorns put together. Something like that. And then now let's actually draw in our lungs. Oops. That got bad there on the side. I really cheated there. Okay. Yeah, not the best, but not terrible either. Now, our lungs are interesting. They actually look something like that. This may be a little overstated, but that's okay. So our right lung, it's on the left side, but we're talking about a corpse here. Remember that? This would be our right lung. Looks more symmetrical like that. Whereas our left lung actually has this cutout, and that's to fit the heart. It makes a little opening for the heart, and we'll be able to see this on models. Okay, that'd be our left lung and our right lung. Okay, then we have things like our aorta coming up and out of here. We'll pull way back so it looks a little bigger. So our aorta is going to come up and out of here. Oops. Why is that so small? Okay, there we go. Like so. And then maybe like wrap around and come back down here, something like that. Okay, and off of this we have some, parts that come up like so. Okay, leave it nice and simple, just like that. We won't get too crazy. Then we got some things here on the side that kind of surround our lungs, and these are made of bone. And I'm sure you guys know what these are. We have 7 pairs of them up top, which are called our true ribs, and then we have 5 pairs down below, which are called our false ribs. I'm not drawing them all in here. Going through a little quick. Let me get rid of these bottom 2 here, just to make it easy. Okay, something like that. And then actually in between these, we've got something called, we'll learn about these also in the next couple lectures, but we got something called intercostal muscles that connect these together. And we actually have 3 sets of them, kind of in different orientations, to bring the ribs up and down. All right. So we've got our ribs, and then we've got our intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles. All right, and why did we draw this brain in here first? Well, this part here, this kind of big, kind of bulbousy part here, just draw this in so it's a little clear. This would be called our pons up here. So this would be our pons. And this part right here, down below here, it's kind of longer. Kind of drew this little, it's got a little bump, but maybe not quite that big. I maybe drew it a little big. It's okay. We'll learn more about these. This is called our medulla oblongata. When I took anatomy, there's this movie called Waterboy. It's an Adam Sandler film. And he says, medulla oblongata. So everybody knew what that was, but culturally that has become less important. I was rewatching an old video of my anatomy professor talking about water boy. Everybody knew the medulla oblongata then. Okay? All right, well, up here we have our cortex of our brain. This is our cortex. It just means the outside. This is where like a lot of our conscious control and like our conscious personality and things like that. It's where our consciousness lives. And really up here, this is like in the front part. This would be the front anterior side of the brain. This would be posterior. The head's kind of to the side like this. This is how I'm drawing this. I don't know if it's, yeah, it's like that. So the head's to the side. Frontal part's right here. Well, up here we have conscious control of our breathing. We'll draw these in blue. So there we have conscious control of our breathing, and here we have subconscious control of our breathing. Our body will take over things for us. And this is like down in it's in our brain stem. This is almost like part of our spinal cord. It's almost like a reflex. Okay, so this would be conscious control of our breathing, or of our breath, conscious control of our breath, and subconscious. Why am I not spelling that right? Conscious control of our breath. So this will take over for us. Okay, so we can exert control over this part. But this part here will normally basically it innervates several different parts. It sends neurons down to our rib muscles here, like so. And it sends a neurons down, I didn't draw this in yet, down here to our diaphragm. So we also have this muscle down here, right underneath the lungs, like so. So this would be our diaphragm. And it's a muscle. And we'll talk about how these work in a second. Diaphragm. Diaphragm. Intercostals and diaphragm muscle. That is diaphragm muscle. Usually just call it the diaphragm, but I want you to know that it is a muscle. So these two control breathing. They affect the capacity of our lungs, and we'll walk through how that actually works. Okay? So the subconscious part will normally do that for us. It'll control these muscles to control our breathing for us. But we can take control of it with our cortex, and I can say, take a deep breath, and my body will do that. But if I stop thinking about it, then my body will just breathe kind of however it is going to breathe, because my medulla oblongata will kind of take over for me, so I don't have to think about breathing all the time. All right, well, how does this work? How is this medulla oblongata kind of regulating things? Well, it does it in a couple by having signals come up to the medulla. So signals come up from these neurons that are attached to these arteries, and they also send up neurons from the aorta as well. Sorry if this is a little messy, but signals here would be going up, and signals here would be going down. Okay, and these actually detect oxygen levels. Detect oxygen levels. So if oxygen levels get low, the brain can increase the rate of respiration. However, this is not that strong of a signal. Our body is not that great at detecting oxygen. It's only if it gets real low will that actually kick in. Okay? The brain up here in the medulla, up in the medulla here, this is actually where most of the regulation of breath is occurring. And how is this occurring? The brain measures H plus to control breathing. H plus, anybody remember what that is on the internet? H plus is, if you remember, H plus is a proton, and proton is acid. So we're measuring the pH here. That's how your body controls breathing. And how does breathing, what does that have to do with pH? We will talk about it. Okay? But I think this is fascinating, and this is kind of what our activity for the week is going to be, is this. We have conscious control of our breath and subconscious control. And so what happens if we make efforts here to have more conscious control of our breathing? What happens to our biology, to our mood, to the way we feel? How does our life improve? So that's going to be kind of the question that you're going to be testing this week in the discussion is, how does conscious control of breath affect your life? We'll look at that. It's a pretty fun little activity. Okay? All right. That was kind of the main point of all that. All this is fair game, knowing that our brain is measuring protons or acidity to control the basic anatomy of our lungs. In the next little lecture, it'll be a quick one, and we're just going to learn how to breathe. Okay? All right. I'll see you guys in the next one.